Once upon a time, there was a couple named Bright and Sandra. After they got married, they were not fortunate to give birth in time. It took them 5 years of crying and praying before they were able to give birth to their daughter. One beautiful evening, after they had eaten dinner that night and retired to bed, Bright was lying down in between the couple. Mr. Bright just kept staring at his little daughter and smiling. "Tell me the reason behind this smile tonight," Sandra asked her husband, also smiling with him. "Who would have ever thought that we would have been parents someday? I hope you remember all we went through." The next day, Mr. Bright was so tangled at work that he forgot it was time to bring Naomi back from school. It was the weekend, and Mr. Bright was shocked that almost an hour had flown by after Naomi's school dismissal time. He pleaded with his wife to quickly go get her because he was still very busy. Sandra left what she was doing immediately and started heading towards Naomi's school. She was already 55 minutes late, and it took another 15 minutes to get to Naomi. Sandra entered a bus, and just after a 5-minute drive, she got stuck in traffic. The traffic was so bad that Sandra decided it was best she comes down and searched for a bike that would be faster, because the bike riders always have a way of maneuvering the traffic. After walking for a while in haste, Sandra stopped a bike. She tried hopping on the bike, and then she remembered she had forgotten her purse inside the bus she had entered earlier. Sandra didn't know if she was to continue to the school or go back to get her purse. She asked the biker to go while she goes to take her phone because her phone was inside the purse. Sandra started walking back in. Meanwhile, back at the school, Naomi sat outside with some of her classmates who were waiting for their parents to come and take them home. Some who had older siblings went home with them as parents came, taking their kids in their numbers. Naomi only sat wondering if her father had forgotten her. "Naomi, your father is not coming today," one of her classmates asked her as she left with her mother. Naomi was already tired of waiting. She was so hungry. She didn't eat the whole day because she didn't like the food her mother had prepared and put into her lunchbox. Naomi stood up and decided to go home alone. She left the school with her bag and lunchbox. She started walking home all alone while carrying her lunchbox. After a few minutes' walk, the lunchbox fell from her hand and rolled into the main road. She tried going to pick it up. Someone tried calling out to Naomi because of the speeding car coming towards her. In the haste, the man driving the car quickly stepped on his brakes, but it was already too late. He had knocked Naomi down. The man came down immediately and saw Naomi lying there almost lifeless and bleeding. Before people would come any closer, the man carried Naomi into his car. He reversed with her in his car and drove off in a haste as Sandra walked back in quick.
Create a YouTube video using exactly this script. Follow another route because of the traffic ahead. She increased her pace, trying to find the bus she had come down from earlier, but she couldn't seem to identify the bus. It looked like the bus had turned around with the others. Sandra carried her hand on her head in confusion. She had just lost her purse containing her phone. She wanted to call her husband, but she couldn't. She couldn't pay for a bike either because she had no money on her. She decided to head down to the school and then call her husband with one of the teacher's phones when she got to the school. After so many minutes of walking under the scorching sun, Sandra arrived in front of the school gate. She was sweating profusely, like someone who had engaged in a marathon race. The environment was very calm, unlike the usual time when there were kids around the vicinity. Sandra's only hope was that her daughter was inside the gate, seeing that there was no padlock on it. As she reached out to open the gate, she saw the headmistress coming out of the gate, holding a padlock to close the gate. Sandra. "Good afternoon, Ma," Sandra greeted, trying to force a smile. "Headmistress? Good afternoon, my dear. Why are you sweating so much?" the headmistress asked, looking at Sandra. "Sandra, I'm sorry I'm so late. It seems everyone has left already?" Sandra asked, looking around. "Headmistress? Yes, it's already 4 p.m. and everyone has left. Today is Friday and we close early," the headmistress answered. "Sandra, what about my daughter?" Sandra asked, fixing her gaze on the headmistress as she locked up the gate. "Headmistress, your daughter? No one is here. Why not call your husband and see if he has her? He comes to pick her up on Fridays," the headmistress answered. "Sandra, I know my husband too well and he can't ask me to come to take my daughter from school if he has already done that," Sandra said, already having mixed feelings. "Headmistress, why not call him?" the headmistress suggested. "Sandra, that's the problem. I can't. I was in a hurry and I forgot my purse with my phone inside the bus I entered earlier when there was traffic. My phone and the little money I had on me are all gone. I just wanted to come and pick up my daughter first before talking about my phone." Headmistress, then how did you pay the bus driver when you came down? Sandra, I had money in my hand already and I just... Oh ma, my phone is not my problem. Where is my daughter? Where is Naomi? Sandra asked, already having a bad feeling. Headmistress, take my phone and call your husband. Let's see if he took her, the headmistress said, dipping her hand into her bag and bringing out her phone. She gave it to Sandra, who collected it and dialed the number. Immediately, Mr. Bree picked up the call. Sandra asked him if he came and took their daughter from school. Mr. Bree told her he had been calling her, but she was not picking up their calls. He wanted to know if they were back home. He couldn't understand what he was hearing over the phone, that his princess was missing. He told Sandra that he was coming over right away. Immediately, Mr. Bree hung up the call, and Sandra could feel the tears building up in her eyes. "Where is my daughter?" Sandra asked the headmistress in a concerned voice. The headmistress was dumbfounded. She had no answer to the question Sandra just asked her. She calmed Sandra down and called the teacher in charge of Naomi's class. She asked the teacher to come back to school as there was a case of a missing person. Sandra didn't know where she would start looking for her only daughter. Tears just kept rolling down her cheeks as she waited for the teacher in charge of Naomi's class. She was restless and just kept looking around, hoping to lay her eyes on Naomi. It took a few minutes, and the teacher came back to the school. She was asked who had taken Naomi. The teacher said Naomi was sitting with her best friend, Anita, outside, waiting for her father. She saw Anita's mother coming to take Anita. After a while, she didn't see Naomi anymore. She thought her father had taken her. Sandra asked the teacher to call Anita's mother on the phone and find out if Naomi had followed her. The teacher was scrolling down her contact list, looking for Anita's mother's number, when Mr. Bree came down from the bike and walked towards them quickly. A call came into the headmistress's phone. She picked it up. "Hello, madam. I think one of your students met with an accident a few minutes ago," the voice said over the phone. The headmistress shifted a bit to where she wouldn't be heard. She asked what the person looked like. The description fitted that of Naomi. She slowly brought down the phone. She didn't know how she was going to tell the couple that their only daughter had been involved in a life-threatening accident. More still, no one knew where she was carried off to by the man who had knocked her down. The headmistress just kept staring at Mr. Bree, who was consoling Sandra, who cried bitterly. It seemed like Anita's mother just told them Naomi wasn't with her. A tear almost dropped off the cheek of the headmistress in confusion and pity for the couple. Earlier, when Naomi was hit by a speeding car, the man who had knocked her down came down from his car immediately. He saw Naomi lying almost lifeless, and without wasting time, he carried Naomi into his car. He reversed his car and drove off. He was praying so hard that she didn't die before he got to the hospital. David was on the phone talking with a business associate. He had actually come for a visit and was going back to his city. He didn't see Naomi. He was lost in the call he was making. He only heard someone's loud cry, which drew his attention. But before he could step on his brakes, he had already knocked the little girl down. So he immediately came down and carried Naomi into his car. He didn't want to take any chances in saving the life of the little girl. What kind of temptation is this? David asked himself as he drove quickly to a hospital he knew was a distance away. He was sweating profusely as he drove at his maximum speed.
When he got to the hospital, he carried Naomi into the hospital. She was already bleeding from her mouth and her head. It seemed like Naomi's head had first landed on the iron in front of his Jeep without falling to the...
David rushed Naomi into the emergency room, his heart pounding with worry. The nurses took charge immediately. The doctor was busy with another patient when he was told of the emergency. He quickly came to see the new patient.
David was pacing around the hospital. He didn't know what to do. The doctor was really taking quite long inside the hospital room, and David grew anxious by the moment. He didn't want to hear any bad
news about Naomi's condition. The doctor came out with a sad look. David walked up to him to ask him how the little girl was doing.